Hi, welcome back to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. My name is Greg Normand, your host. Well, as the temperatures drop and the leaves fall from the trees, we get a chance to say goodbye to Inside Great Lakes Sailing for another summer. And we're finishing off our 2025 season with a really interesting show. We're going to spend some time up front with Cate Muller, who is the wife of Alan Terhane, and they bought the Melges Sailboat Company, which is a company that has put a standard in the sailboat industry and the design industry that's parallel to none. And after 80 years, they're going to step aside, and a new group of folk from Ohio. We're going to talk to them about the legacy, the company, and all that it offers. And I think you'll find this to be a delightful interview. I only say delightful because I had a chance to talk to Cate for a better part of an hour and a half, and I can't wait to have a beer with her sometime on the dock somewhere. She's just a really nice young lady, and I think they're going to bring great things to an already great company. So I think that's something you want to pay attention to. And then we're going to do as we always do. Our favorite resident former Commodore from North Cape Yacht Club, Duane Burgoyne, and I are going to spend some time looking at the season, talking about some of the stories that we've run, and kind of go through and have a discussion about season 6 of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. It's been a fun season to bring to you. We brought, I think, a lot of folks to the table. We had a chance to have one of the first interviews with Charlie Enright, who is the U.S. Sailing CEO. We've talked to Paul Goodison. We've talked to Maggie Shea. We've talked to gold medal winners. We've talked to some folks that certainly enjoy the sport and have had success at its highest levels. We've also been able to bring you some of the local activity. One of the things we wanted to mention to you is the folks at Ten Knot, the clothing company. We've been able to run some ads for them, and it's a company that's just about to take off, and we wish them the best of luck, and we appreciate all the support they've given us. But we'll talk of that with Duane a little bit, and we'll get through we won't be back until next, March. We'll come back at the end of March because we're going to do a skiing show this winter, and we're going to go a chance to cover the Olympics in Italy in February. So we'll be on snow until the weather breaks, and we'll be back for our 7th season of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. So for all the folks that have watched and all the folks that have been a part of this and all the folks that have helped us, I can only say thank you very much, and it's been a fun time. That being the case, Cate Muller will be up in just a couple seconds, and I think you'll find it to be an interesting interview. Welcome back. We're talking with, this is going to be a really fun interview. We're talking with Cate Muller Terhune, and I want to make sure we use the whole name, even though you're used Cate Muller as from a professional name. You and your husband just bought Melges, or the great boat company,
Yes.
up in Wisconsin, and we're going to get through a number of conversations. But I get the first and easiest question is, how did that come about and why?
It's a good question that sometimes I still ponder. Um, a couple years ago, I was in the process of selling my family's business. We owned an architecture firm for 40 years and in Chicago. And I don't know if Alan had like a conversation at a scow regatta or what happened, but he came home and he was like, "What if we bought Melges one day?" And I was like, "Ah." And I was still in the throes of, if anyone's ever sold a business, it is a complicated and just arduous process, to be polite. Um, and I was like in one ear, out the other. And then in June or July of 2024, um, Alan was like, "Hey, before the Mac race, we're gonna go up to Lake Geneva and sit down with Harry and Andy and Eddie and kind of figure this out." And I had met Andy Burdick many times, and I knew of Harry, hadn't ever met him before, I don't think. And we had a really great conversation, and just not really about the business so much, but really about where we all see sailing going. Um, we know that the sport is contracting, and what do we all want to do to help make it better and help make it more accessible? And that conversation was really the bedrock of how this process got going. Um, I didn't sell my family's business till December of 2024. So there was still a lot of time there. Wait, 24. Yeah, 24.
Yeah.
The years are all blending. And in earnest after that, we started talking and, selling a business is as laborious as buying a business. So it took a while, but um, we got to the finish line in late September, early October, and it's been a really exciting process. And I think, again, the thing that was great about it, has been great about it, and I think will continue to be great about it is the legacy that will be left on the sport of sailing. And, Alan and I view ourselves as, caretakers and curators of the brand and the legacy that the Melges family has already started to leave. So
Was it up for sale?
I'm not really sure.
I mean, because
Um, no,
I
it
asked this,
wasn't.
I asked the question
Yeah,
because there's nothing in the press. There was nothing.
no,
All of a sudden, Melgus has sold new ownership when
yeah.
it's a very successful company.
Yeah, no, I don't think that it was quote unquote up for sale. I think, and this is, and I apologize for speculating. I think it was just one of those things, H3 is, um, I think he wants to retire eventually. Maybe not fully, but I know he wants to step back from, running a business is a pain. And I think having us come in helps him focus on the things that he loves to do. He's still in the shop every day. He's there at 4 in the morning in his Tyvek suit. And that's what he loves. And having Alan and I there it helps him focus on the things he loves to do. And I love running businesses, and Alan loves the sailing industry. He loves the logistics behind it. That's been his life for since college, basically. So we're just able to augment and add. But do I think it was actually for sale? No, it was never publicly for sale. If this was a process that we worked on together to get to a place where we all could be happy.
All I can think of is right time, right place. Boy, does that make that true, right?
Yeah, I think it was there's some things that are just meant to be, and when there's a will, there's a way, and we got there.
When you mentioned H3, you're talking about Harry the Third. This is
You're the third.
the father,
Yes.
not Buddy, obviously.
Not Buddy.
Does the advent of Harry H4, the grandson, who's
Yes.
obviously been very successful with the America's Cup boats and some of the stuff that he's on, does that alleviate that? Maybe it's not a legacy thing for the family because he becomes this pro racer, which is kind of where he's headed.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing I forgot this. People might forget this. H4, Harry the Fourth, he's young. He's in his early 20s, maybe but early to mid 20s. And
24.
yeah, so early to mid. That's where I never know when people want to be called their mid
Right.
anything as someone that's approaching 42 next year. But he's still got a lot of time ahead of him to pursue those dreams. And, um, when I was 24, I didn't want to be working for my parents. That
Right.
was, eventually I got there, but it wasn't something at the time that I was even thinking about. I was still coaching sailing and things like that when I was that age. So, I think for us, this is the great opportunity where, Alan and I are both in our 40s. We have management experience, we have business experience. We can help continue to grow and foster this business. And, you know, if H4 wants to be a part of it again, and I certainly hope that he will, the door is always open. And he is as much of a part of our team as ever. And it's fun having him around. He's in the shop when he's in Lake Geneva and doing stuff, and the Zenda Express was getting ready to go out. He was working on the boat. He loves it. He's passionate about it. And so the opportunities are there, and I want him to always know that I'm kind of stepping in as part of their family, but he's part of our family. So
H3 and H4, I hate to call them that, but both areas
it's easy.
have been on the show a couple years ago, and the father, not Buddy,
Mhm.
said that H4 is sort of a combination of Grandpa and him,
that he thinks he's probably the smartest of the three generations as far as business goes, but the H4 is certainly a better sailor than H3. And it was kind of cool listening to that process. But I also would imagine being Buddy's son and being in that shadow would also have a hard way of finding your way out. And I think Dad, at least from looking inside outside in, did a great job because Harry H4 is just such a personable young man and just a
Yeah,
pretty really cool kid.
he's fantastic.
Yeah.
They both are, honestly.
So when you take over, when you approach a business, and maybe just a little background, you sailed at Marquette. You were a
Yep,
college sailor, so you've spent your whole life as a sailor, competitive sailor. Your husband's a world champion. Alan's been a merchant marine guy, taught at the Naval Academy. I mean, you
yep,
guys are. He was a longtime member, or still is, I guess, Jay, with the North Sail Company. He's still part
yep.
of that. So we won't make any quantum jokes. So, well, from that standpoint, so obviously very qualified folks that they're taking over. When you look at this legacy company,
Mhm.
it's got to keep you awake at night to wonder what the next right turn is. I mean, this is not nothing against the architectural business. I read
Yep.
a little bit about what your family had done. It was a phenomenal business, but this has also got the eyes of not just being a business, but being a business in a sport that everybody kind of, you guys set some standards.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a different legacy.
It is. It is. It absolutely is. I think that, one of the things that we are working on really hard right now is, we've got a great product in the Melges 15. People love the boat. The January event will probably get 100 plus boats down at the Merritt Island at the Melges Water Sports Center. We have the 19 coming online. These are all awesome products that are pushing the sport forward, making it accessible. And then we have the scows, and we really like that's the bread and butter and the heart and soul of where the brand started. So, making sure that we are still supporting scow sailing, being involved, pushing that forward. It's it's a balance. And then what is next? And honestly, I'm still getting my feet under me, so I'm not quite at the what is next point. Um, but I think making sure that the brands that we have that are pushing forward and the legacy brands of the E Scout, the A Scout, MC, Sea Scout, that those not only the boats, but the fleets and the people and the camaraderie. I was just at an E-Scout dinner the other week, and like any fleet that anyone's been a part of for a long time, the love of the boat and what they're all and the community that they've created is at the center point of everything. And all these people love sailing these boats. So how can we make sure on our side that we're continuing to not only produce boats, but then support the fleets and be a part of it. And so you know, that was kind of a roundabout answer, but it's a lot. It's a big legacy to take on, and we have to honor the past, continue to look forward. And I think there's going to be really exciting things in the future. I think the Water Sports Center and what we're doing down there, I'm excited. I've been there not during a regatta. I'm going to the Melges 15 regatta next weekend. I'm really excited for that, just to see what it's like when there's tons of people there and it's activated. But we also have just intro to sail classes down there, and we're activating in the community. And um, I hope that, we're going to start to do more educational STEM work down there and work with local schools. There's a lot of opportunity, and it's all based around, how can we get people excited about the sport of sailing, and how can we provide access, whether it's the boat that we're building or the programming that we're creating. We really just want people to enjoy the sport that we love so much.
Running a business is running a business. It's got to be profitable. You've got to go through books. You've got to do the rest of it. There's some inside baseball of running an architectural firm that's certainly going to be different than running a sailboat company and all the things
Yeah.
that go with that. Now, being a sailor certainly helps that understanding.
Yeah.
How much of a learning curve to take over a company that's been as successful as Melgus has been?
It's a learning curve. It's a different type of ebb and flow cash flow, to be honest. So for me, that's just my own anxieties of how I've run a business in the past and working through that. But um, it's business is business. You
Okay.
want to stay positive. It's
No, no,
yeah,
that's fine.
it's not I hate to say that it's not overly complicated because, business is complicated, but um I think like anything when you work on keeping things simple and you know I hate the word lean because I think it implies things that it doesn't. But when you just always have to make sure that you're making smart decisions. And those smart decisions, I think, are people forward led. I think that, you know, the bottom line and the dollar is very, very important. But none of it matters if the people that are working for you and giving you the product aren't happy. I think our people are happy, which is great. And I want to it's my hope as an owner that, we just to continue to foster that and create a really great environment.
You mentioned fleets. One of the things we've done on the show is we've interviewed the guy that's still building Lightnings and the guy that's still building Flying Scots, a couple of those guys. We went back to the beginnings and talked to them about the premise. One of the guys that built the North American 40, we had a conversation with him. He was a guy who just out of the middle of nowhere had won the Fastnet and decided
Yeah,
to build a boat the next year. And then he started building North Americans. The passion of the various fleets, they believe they're the most passionate fleet within sailing. Doesn't matter who you talk
yeah,
to. It reminds me a lot of surfers. Lived in San
yeah,
Diego at the beach a lot of years, and surfers are very eclectic kind of folk in that they're if there's good waves, we're not coming to work till 10
yeah,
o'clock because we're that passionate about our sport. We're not talking about bums, we're talking about professional doctors,
totally.
lawyers, and Indian chief kind of folk. And that kind of is the premise. So everybody's got their I think one of the reasons that J boats change all the time is because they got to find another fleet to build. And I think that's a factor in this. But that being the case, do you worry about the cost of sailboat racing right now? More importantly, of acquiring boats, because the cost does keep certain groups out of being able to have the opportunity.
Yeah, the cost of sailing, I mean, unfortunately, the cost of anything is going up these days. And, it's not cheap to do things in America. Um, we still build a lot of boats in America. We're pumping out five-ish boats a week in Zenda. Um, but some of our materials are coming from overseas and now we're tariffed, things like that. Buying masts is just bringing in aluminum. That's difficult these days. That has a very high tariff.
Yeah.
Um, so I do worry about the cost and I, we are trying to figure out ways to keep the costs as low as possible. Um, but with that, I think people do have to remember that, the cost of, your car has gone up, cost of your boat might go up. Ugh, it's scary to say, but not, we work really hard to make the cost of something that we're producing as, achievable to, you know, I don't want to say the average American, but as achievable to the average sailor that wants to get into a boat can be. Um, and then with that said, I think that, one of the things that I've seen happening in sailing that I'm hoping kind of helps give access to those that can't buy is certainly fleet purchases from yacht clubs, things like that. I think the Melges 19 that just came out would be a great candidate for a yacht club fleet purchase. Um, it's a high performance three-person, it's a dinghy, it has a centerboard, but I can step on one and without the centerboard in and not worry about flipping over while it's at the dock. It's a very, very stable platform. Um, I think the more, you know, until we have a kind of resurgence in the economy, we're going to see a lot more of that.
Yeah.
And I think making sure that nothing against the sonar, I have sailed sonar regattas many times. Um, but going and sailing a sonar doesn't really like get me out of bed in the morning, but going
Right.
and sailing August 19, you know, team race regatta, I think would excite a lot of people and kind of excites the base a little more. So I think there are alternate ways that people, especially kind of that getting out of college into their 30s band, is finding their way into sailing, and the programming that we are setting up down in Merritt Island, I think helps, work on that problem. I don't know if there's a solution, a quote unquote solve, but we're trying to do what we can to help.
The fleet sale for the ICC 37s to New York Yacht Club, and was that kind of a forerunner to the kind of things that clubs might be looking at? Is that because that boat has obviously everybody said it's so easy to sail, and I've been on one, and it is,
Yeah,
but that's also a boat that doesn't have big fleets other than the New York Yacht Club.
right. I mean, the IC-37 is a pretty unique beast. I think that, New York Yacht Club is also in a position where they
Right,
were able to do that. That's a pretty unique yacht club position to be in.
right,
Um, I love the IC-37. I sailed on one all summer with John Brim on the Rima, and it's a great boat. I think it'd be fantastic to see fleet purchases like that. I don't think that's necessarily realistic right now. I think that a lot of yacht club fleet purchases are in kind of the sonar and smaller range, maybe in like the 18 to 24-foot range.
right.
Um, but would I love to see more people buying something like an IC-37? Yeah, why not? But I think they should
Well,
buy Melges 19s though.
no, and I get that. Walking
Yeah.
around Annapolis a couple weeks ago, you recognize I've got a 30 day
Mhm.
it's the most comfortable boat in our harbor because I got a
Yeah.
50-inch television. I'm not stripping it down because I like my 45-inch mattress. But
Yeah.
anything replicated of a 30-foot boat that would look like the one I have, even though mine's old and
Yeah.
in good shape, I mean, you're looking at six figures. It's just the
Oh yeah.
nature of the beast, and
Yeah.
that's cuts out
Prohibitive.
some part of the market. And I understand that
Yeah.
premise. Recently, there's been this big whole argument about ILCA that they just fixed with the performance sailboat guys down in Australia.
Mhm.
And one of the things that's happened since Barcelona, and I think this is true. I know from talking with some of the guys that I'm involved in with television, is that there's a big debate about what's the best boats and what's the kind of boats for moving forward. And television, if you want the revenue from the television that provides,
Mhm.
the sailing Olympics in Brisbane, excuse me, in Marseille were awful. And the America's Cup got turned off in some places on ESPN Plus
Yeah.
in the West Coast because the pickleball championships were gaining higher ratings. My point is that
Yeah.
television wants to push towards foiling,
Yeah.
not so much flat bottom boats. And I'm not saying television is the future of racing, but SailGP has had a little bit of luck in
Yeah.
providing that opportunity, but then the purists say that's not sailing. So it's this dilemma at the point where we're really in a unique position
Mhm.
in the sport. And does Melgus have any interest, or are they looking at any kind of foiling boats?
So we have the Switch, which is not built in, we're not the designers of it, but we are the only place you can buy one in the US is through us. And it's a foiler. It kind of, I want to say it's like the Wasp, but a little more accessible. The price point's more accessible. So we do, obviously foiling is super cool. I I've sailed Moth once a long, long time ago, foiled. It was amazing. It's a really unique experience. Do I think that it's, what the everyman is going to be doing? I don't know. So to that respect, we support foiling. We're excited about it. We have foiling switch camps at the Water Sports Center, and we're all about it. I know that H4 loves the Moth, loves foiling, all that kind of stuff. Um, do I see us designing a foiler anytime soon? Probably not, but I open to it? Obviously, we're open to anything. Um,
I
yeah.
don't I don't see I don't agree with the premise I just mentioned.
Okay,
I
good.
say that,
Yeah,
again, I say it because having been a junior sailing director, I've had to buy 420s, and then you turn around and what are you going to?
yeah,
One of the things at our club, I said, if I buy one foiler, small, for the fleet
mhm,
for the kids, we'll never get it, and it'll end up being wrecked because the adults are going to want to use it.
right,
Second part, it's opposite of everything we've learned about sailing. Instead of leaning in and leaning back, it
right.
changes. Is it a fun um, avocation of the process? Yeah, it really is.
Yeah,
But when I talk to these guys, and we talked to the guy that owns the performance sailcraft, and they had a big lawsuit with World Sailing, and
right.
I just don't see it going that direction because it's such a different animal.
It's a really different beast. And you know, from my perspective, I'm not worried about, what's getting TV ratings. So I'm
No, I get
worried
that.
about, yeah, what people want to go sailing on. And I think that, listen, we had the 19 out for test sails in Annapolis, and I mean, it was maybe blowing like 12 knots. People were doing like 16 downwind. That's going to get people excited about going sailing. And it's like the person that's going to do that wouldn't think to step on a moth or even a switch. So eh, I think foiling's really cool. I think one of the best parts about sailing in general, it's kind of like surfing. There's a really like Step into Liquid was one of my favorite movies in college. I would watch it over and over again. And the thing that I loved about it was you saw everything from these guys in Sheboygan that are surfing when there's a nor'easter on Lake Michigan to like the big wave guys on foiling boards. The stoke is still there no matter what you're doing. And I think that the same thing applies for sailing. And so, people are going to go foiling and it's going to be great and they're going to be stoked, but their stoke is no better or worse than, you know, the guy that's sailing a 19 or, you know, someone on their Cal 25 in Detroit. Like it's everyone's getting excited about being on the water. And from my perspective, and we're just worried about getting people excited about being on the water.
As an owner, you've got to have a sort of a future plan. What kinds of things is your company, is Melges looking for? What is it? What are you looking for over the next 10? What are some unique ideas that are being talked about that are maybe not reality? What's the next sort of step in the process? Obviously, you added the 19, and that's fine for the fleet.
Yeah.
But is it a new construction way? Is it new design? Is there something coming down the pipe that we're not aware of? Because I see these boats at Annapolis. There's some really interesting designs
Hmm.
that don't always fit the necessary trademark of what's been done.
Yeah.
Rounded bows, things that, just different kinds of designs. And I think it's in the next few years, I think it's going to be really interesting to watch how boats design in general.
Yeah, and so we've got some stuff in the pipeline, more on the like junior sailing intro boat spectrum. We've got a really cool kid boat coming online, hopefully in the next few months, and called the Spark. And I think that, um, like I've seen kids sailing it. I've watched us build them. You know. I would love for it to displace the Opti one day. I don't know if the Optimist will ever be displaced. It's kind of the gold standard for kids sailing. But that being said, I think giving kids an option for something that's a little more fast, a little more fun, a little more applicable to the next boat that you're going to move into
Yeah.
is really exciting. And I think that, the youth is the future, quote unquote. So getting kids in boats that are actually like really, really fun uh, is a big part of what we're working on in the near future here. There are some other things floating around that I can't really talk about.
No, I
Um,
get that.
yeah, but then from a perspective of just, the process, we're definitely looking at how we can make the process of building boats a little easier. I read something that like AI is going to help the average worker only have to work 2 days a week in 6 years. Where am I going to get my money? I'm not sure. But I think that there's a lot of different technology out there that could help us build our products, at a quicker clip and at just as great quality in the future. So I think, we're open to kind of these new technology ideas and different ways that we can, help augment an already really amazingly great process.
I said at a party the other day that an AI interviewer would hit the talking points like a politician might,
Yeah.
wouldn't have the conversational language, being able to take a right hand turn because something popped in your brain that didn't necessarily fit the premise, because maybe there's something that you said that triggered the interviewer to be able to
Yeah.
make a bad joke or another point. And I think that's a true.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is you mentioned the spark.
Mhm.
Again, as a guy who ran a junior sailing program, but with no racing background, I look at an Opti, and then you either look at a laser or a 420. And I
Yeah.
said, well, why isn't there something, in between? And then you
Right.
see a 160-pound kid in an Optimus, a little Opti, and it just doesn't look right.
Yeah. Right.
And
Right. And I
it's
think this is going to be a product that kind of fits that in between. It has a small sail and a larger sail. Um, so you'll be able to grow with the boat, or the boat will be able to grow with you, I should say. And, you know, I coach sailing. There's going to be the kids that want to go sailboat racing, but there's also going to be the kids that just want to have fun. They just want to go fast, rip around, flip over when there's no wind, and have a good time. And kind of getting back to the Stoke point, their version of having fun at sailing camp is no different than the kid that's like super, super, like, I gotta go racing. I gotta try and figure out how to win. Like, we need both of those people in the world. And so our programming and the boats that we have need to be supporting both of those
yeah.
people. Yeah.
My only editorial comment, and I don't make it often, but I make it from time to time, as a veteran coach of other sports, both
Hmm.
collegiately and intercollegiate sports and high school sports. We don't give kids enough time in the boat by themselves. If it's a junior sailing program, if you follow the one-on-one model, if you're
Hmm.
there for 8 hours, it's part of it's babysitting. The other
Yeah.
half of it is kids being, directed by some instructor.
Yeah.
We opened up our junior sailing program on the weekend so the kids come out and just sail.
Yeah.
Think of when I was a kid, I'd go to the playground and play baseball 6 hours a day and have that
Yeah.
opportunity.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to end up this 2026. I think John Pierce has asked me to consider joining the coaches and the instructors subcommittee for education for U.S. sailing.
Very cool.
I have no sailing background, but I've been very successful as a coach outside the
Right.
sport. But the sport sometimes doesn't take lessons from somebody who doesn't have the sailing pedigree.
Yeah. I
What do
can
you
see.
know? You don't know anything. Well, I've run programs with thousands of kids in them. I have a pretty good understanding of
Yeah.
how to build a program and make it fun for kids.
Right.
Um, at our own yacht club, one year I got yelled at for having $265 popsicle bill because I had a big refrigerator. The kids could get a popsicle when they did something good.
Right.
We're taking in 40 grand on entry fees, but they're worried about $250 for the popsicle. I get the premise. I don't get,
Yeah.
and you can't get mad at people who don't know any better,
No,
because
no.
most of them have never coached. They're just flag guys that think that they knew what they knew from the time frames. But the boat entry is something that I think is unique.
Yeah.
Last couple questions, and I really appreciate this interview. This has been really a very terrific opportunity to talk to you. Do you lay awake at night thinking, "Oh my God, what did we do?" And not because of any other thing, that this is a really important plank in the American sailing history, and that
Yeah.
that has some ramifications and certainly some both limitations and opportunities. It's an extraordinary thing that you buy a company that isn't for sale, and I don't think anybody's put their head around that yet. That's why we wanted to talk to you. Does it give you thought, or is it just, are you more of a 100% optimist and just off you go?
Well, if you ask my husband, I'm like a 100% optimist. I'm probably like one of the more optimistic people that you'll meet. Um, My
He's
mom would
pragmatic.
say that I saw the world through rose-colored glasses, and that,
Okay.
is a positive and is a negative all at the same time. Um, I lay awake at night. I do worry about it. I'm still pinching myself that we did this. It's been basically a month since the public announcement, so it hasn't been that long. Still
Yeah.
settling into the notion of it. But it is a big responsibility. And and I recognize that, and Alan certainly recognizes that. You know, when we were contemplating if this was the right move, it's a big shakeup to our family situation. It's a we're basically, I have to get in the car tomorrow and drive all the way to Annapolis from Wisconsin, which is not a short drive. Just so that we can bring our dog home for the weekend so that my stepkids can see him. So it's a giant thing for us, but I think the thing that really captured us was, you know, when we're 60, 70, 80 years old, what is the legacy that we want to leave on the sport of sailing? And I think that the legacy that we would both like to leave and the legacy that Melges has started, and especially where their vision of where they saw themselves going, was very aligned. And so, to a certain extent, I sleep pretty well at night knowing that we're all on the same page, with where we want to see the sport move. So, but yeah, sometimes I'm still awake at night, especially like before payday and stuff like that.
And I touched on this briefly when we emailed each other. I said it's Melges, it's not Melgis. And the
Yes,
funny part
Melges.
to this, and I just briefly, I interviewed Harry H3,
Yep.
and I was apparently using Melgis throughout the interview. And somebody from Chicago that we both know, and I won't mention the name, kind of called me and told me that it's Melges. So when I got back to our club, and when I got back to here in the Detroit area, somebody would say Melgis, and I would say, "Wait a minute, that's not the way you pronounce it." And how do you know that? I said, "Well, I've got very good authority on how you say it. How you're supposed to say it."
That's a Wisconsin versus Michigan thing.
Yeah, I have family in Wauwatosa, so
Okay.
think of it this way: pop versus soda. As when we grew up, I
Yeah.
drank pop, they drank soda, right?
I mean, we're drinking our water out of a bubbler here, so who knows what's happening in
Yeah,
Wisconsin.
no, there's some real specific differences between Milwaukee and Detroit.
Oh yeah.
And 89th and Burley, if you know where that is, where the big water tower is.
Oh yeah.
The church on top of the hill. My uncle lived on Burleigh, so we spent 2 or 3 weeks every summer with my dad's brother, and this the old back the garages were in the back of the. And then they
Yep.
would come here to the lake, and they would go nuts because there would be a water in the front where they could go swimming or boating or sailing or anything else.
Yeah.
So it changes it. So I know it for sure. It's Melges, and make sure
Yeah.
I pronounce it correctly. So, listen, I appreciate you talking to us. This has been a really fun interview. This will finish I think, our 6th season,
Wow.
and
That's awesome.
yeah, it's been really fun. We've had some really good folks on this year. We've had Charlie Enright, we had Paul Goodison. We have a lot of Maggie Shea, just
Yeah.
a bunch of really good sort of high level kind of folks, and it's been a real treat. So
It's a good
hopefully
company to be.
our no, we should mention we should mention short terms that we were set up. Scott Herman was enough to set
Yeah.
us up. Scott runs Spectrum Sailing, which is a
Yeah.
program for autistic kids. We've had him on the show, and you're part of that board,
Yep. I'm a founding board member of Spectrum Sailing, so it's
which
been a
tells me a
really,
little bit about your heart. So I think
yeah.
that's the cool part. And I want to give Scott a plug. I know we talked a little bit about he's got some stuff coming out next year. And there's
Yep.
another guy that, like me, just sort of started something out of nowhere and
Yeah.
sailing to promote the sport, different niche, if you will. But
Definitely.
we want to thank him for the introduction.
Absolutely.
I'm hoping our paths will cross and maybe learn something from you guys, because the one thing that this show provides for me is when you sit across from uh, you know, any number of professionals, you get better as a sailor. And when I started this program, I was a pretty average sailor, but I certainly have learned a lot from just listening to the guys that are so good at what they do. So thank you. Good luck
Thank you.
with the program. And we'll certainly touch base next year and see where
Awesome.
things go with Melges. So thanks very much, Cate.
Great. Thank you so much, Greg. I appreciate it.
Every day, thousands of kids start vaping. And I can't let this happen to my kid. Of course, it's awkward to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping. Hey, bestie, how sketch is vaping? It's hard to get their attention. Ready? Go. Yes. Look at that. You didn't even turn yours over. So if you want to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping, you got to get it trending.
No, you're doing it wrong.
Let's go.
Can we talk?
Yeah, what's up?
Visit talkaboutvaping.org for tips on when and how to have the vape talk.
Welcome back. We're having a conversation with Duane Burgoyne, our favorite North Cape former Commodore. We are finishing up the 17th show for Inside Great Lakes Sailing and kind of putting a show to bed for about 4 months, get a chance to spend some time in the ski hills. And Duane, we're going to do like we've always done. Last year we were sitting at one of the bars, Clinton River. I think the year before we were someplace in Belleville. This year we're going to do a little bit over line because we're kind of late in the season, but it's been a fun summer. It's been an interesting summer. We're going to hit on some subjects, but any thoughts on the summer in general?
It certainly was. It was a great summer. The weather was just fantastic. We had some light wind races. We had some pretty heavy wind races, but the reality of it is that we stayed pretty safe out there. Of course, we had some man overboards that in the Mackinac race, which had rescues and things like that. So I think the U.S. Sailing Safety at Sea seminars that are going on are pretty good. I think they're working out. I mean, we're not losing personnel for man overboards. So yeah, it was a pretty successful year.
After we've done 148 shows, this being the 149th, it's been really interesting. We started out this year with Maggie Shea, Charlie Enright, Paul Goodison, Dave Reed. We eventually got to some guys all the way down in Perth, and I had this conversation. We talked to Richard Gladwell, who's the editor of sailworld.com, and they've been running some of our international and national interviews. And from where we started to where we are, it's been kind of a fun, sort of a fun trail we've been able to cover, and we're also able to pick up a lot of the local stuff. We've got, Michael Kirkman had such a great match racing history. We got covered some of that covered. We've covered the 52s. Tim Profit just put out a T-shirt with all 5 of the Great Lakes that he raced on, and had a great race there. Won the big Lake Superior and the overall trophy. We had a chance to cover all that. The 52 guys were really fun to watch, and we've also had some interviews with some other folks. That just
we were able to get a hold of some junior sailors that went out the West Coast from REE. Pretty exciting for those kids to do that.
I've been wondering for a while where we landed and how we landed, but when we ran with Richard Gladwell and we got on Sail World, they ended up, I think we were somewhere around 730,000 views, and we started getting emails from Africa and these other places. It's kind of crazy, but I think we've landed in a good spot, and I think we've been very fortunate. We're going to change the format a little bit next year. We're going to do a little more travel if we can. We finally got our boat back put in place. We did talk this past week to Jeff McFeeters about the Rust Belt 950 from Chicago all the way to Buffalo. It's not a race. I know it's going to be run in the same year as the Trans Superior, but it's more of an exhibition because they don't care if you stop in and sleep overnight. It's just an idea of going from Chicago all the way to Buffalo is maybe a bucket list kind of race. Because you can paddle your boat if you want. So that's a whole nother discussion. I think we've been really fortunate to have some really good personalities and have some really good discussion, even this long form interviews. And it's been fun to be able to see the love of the sport, and especially like with the 52 group. That is such a good group of professional sailors, one of the better fleets in the world. And it'll be interesting to see what happens this next year. Fleet gets bigger. And we've got the Olympics coming, and there's a whole discussion there about the Olympics, but we'll hold that off. So I think it's for the most part, I think people are watching, and I think it's been a fun deal.
It's been a lot of fun. We've covered a lot of things from Lake Michigan, Huron, Erie, Ontario, and we were over in Ontario with Tim Profit. So I mean, twice to Ontario with Tim Profit.
We've had the good fortune that we kind of broke a story with Ohana being sued over some malfeasance during the Chicago to Mac race with with the Chicago Yacht Club. We had a little bit of a discussion. That was kind of fun. Tim winning the Bartel Trophy, which I think is kind of a cool thing. And there's been a bunch of stuff that we've had an opportunity. You and I spent some time on Mackinac Island on the Chicago race and watched some of those boats. And again, always a fun race to see and hopefully we'll learn some things. The three areas of subjects, and I want to start with the easiest one. The subject I keep hearing from people is the cost of, if you're rich, you can belong to a yacht club. If you're not rich, you can't belong to a yacht club. And the arrogance that comes with yacht clubs and all those kinds of names. And I think I look at you and I, and neither one of us are what you would consider to be rich and famous.
Not at all.
And as we discussed on the dock one day, there's an application for yes, it takes a couple of bucks to belong to a yacht club, but you can spend as little as $5,000 or $6,000 a year for a yacht club, and as much as a couple $100,000. If you want to belong to Chicago or Edgewater, New York, and then in places like North Cape, which is just regular working folk like North Cape and us and North Star. There's all kinds of opportunities. I know the sport looks a lot like us, and maybe it's got to change a little bit, but I think the cost of the sport isn't as dramatic as people think. Is that a fair assumption?
No, it is not at all. In fact, the way I got started is I walked down the dock. I got some foul weather gear, not fancy stuff like I have now, but had some foul weather gear, walked down the dock, and I asked 3 boats, and they said, no, we're full crew. And I got on the 4th boat and went out and we won the race. So, I mean, it worked out pretty well. So the guy who, I was 30 years old or so, had 2 kids at home. I couldn't afford the big boat or the big program. I couldn't afford the program. So, you can walk down the dock and get on a boat. Then you decide to maybe want to join a yacht club, and it's ironic that when you made the phone call, I have a shirt on Elm Cup. That's a yacht club down in Columbus, Ohio. It's on Elm Creek. It's 5 miles long by 3/4 miles, and they sail J24s, Catalina 22s, S279s, and it doesn't take a lot of money to belong to a club like that. And then we've talked before, North Cape Yacht Club and Crescent. It's a sailing. They're sailing clubs, and you don't have a lot of investment in there. We've got boats at North Cape Yacht Club are 20, 30, 40 years old, and so there's not a huge investment. And then you can go a higher level if you want to. You can go to an Edgewater Yacht Club and in Cleveland, a Bayview Yacht Club up at Detroit, and so on and so forth up. And that's a little bit higher ticket, but you got restaurants and things like that. It is what your choice is, what your style is. So the reality of it is, it doesn't take a lot of money to sail, certainly, and it doesn't take a lot of money to commit to be a skipper and have your own boat program. There's nothing more fun than winning your first blue flag. I mean, I remember that day.
Well, it does bring up another subject. And one of the things we did this year, we had a chance to interview a number of people that are involved in the media. Phoebe Waller-Hall was on this year. We had Richard Gladwell, the editor. We've had some other folks on. And kind of not exploring certainly exploring the sport of sailing, but how the media can help advance the idea that, we're not a bunch of elite slops, kind of thing, and kind of look at towards the process. And we had some really interesting discussions about sort of a lack of awareness by some of the flags from various places, because as we discussed different kinds of things, they could be a little bit better at the process. And if we've got a small niche sport and you've got this attitude from the people from the outside don't necessarily think as well as we do, I think they could, and those discussions were really kind of cool, because all the way from New Zealand all the way to here, it's the same conversation with the people covering the sport.
Yep.
And the way you're treated and the way you're operating. And, last year we had a chance to go to Barcelona and Marseille, and it was a little different there. But if you get a chance to listen to some of those interviews, we really got to do a better job of promoting the sport within the sport.
Promoting and marketing, it comes out every place. I will attend the RSA meeting for U.S. Sailing tomorrow. And we just attended the DRYA meeting last week, maybe 2 weeks ago. The conversation in there was that we have so many races that we don't have can't miss events. And that was the argument at DRYA. I'll go to IOIA, the annual meeting here, and we'll have the same discussion there. So it's, how is it that you promote sailing? How is it that you market sailing? It's a niche sport and things like that. That's always the main question. Do we have too many regattas, or do we have too few regattas?
One of the things we did this year is we chased the ILCA format, and one of there's sort of this conglomeration of subjects. We hypothesized before anybody else did that the America's Cup and DeVos and those guys would not be entering the America's Cup, and that was just a rumor that we'd heard, and we kind of speculated it. We also speculated that Terry Hutchinson would be sort of stepping aside and all the rest of it, and part of that was just based on a lot of conversations around the 52 fleet, and for the most part, most of that came true. When you confronted them at Macatawa, as I did with Terry on the dock, was, the week before, no, same kind of thing, and it goes back to the Paul Goodison over in Barcelona. You make the mention that he's injured. No, he's not. And there's this, again, that elitist kind of premise of kinds of things. But out of that comes from, I think, some really cool discussion about, with the ILCA and all of the sizing with these performance sailcraft of Australia, we were chasing that story because the boat wasn't built correctly. But out of that was a rumor that started all the way last year about how the sport is changing for the Olympics coming up in 28. And specifically, television wants foiling because it's got better numbers than the rest. And you kind of wonder if some of the stuff that they're doing isn't prefabricated, because in 32, the Chinese are going to be a part of it. And we actually got an interview with the chairman of the Pacific Performance Sailcraft from Australia. And then we kind of had to back off the story because I started to get these international opportunities, but what's the point? We're inside Great Lakes sailing. There's no effect on us.
Yeah.
But there is a movement, a big movement, because right now World Sailing is looking at the kinds of venues that they've got for the Olympics coming up. So it's an interest. We're right in now in a movement in sailing that's going to change. There's articles about, are we going to not have an America's Cup because of the way they're operating? So it's a really interesting time for sailing right now.
It certainly is. I mean, we've gone away from IOR boats into boats now that surf along the with A sails and everything. And then there's boats out there that are foiling. We haven't seen a foiling boat come to Mackinac yet. So I don't know if that's something that you're going to see in the Great Lakes in the near future. But when we take a look at the World Sailing Program, we're still seeing exciting monohull boats like your Super Series 52s, your Great Lakes 52s, your TP 52s. Those are exciting sailing. Those are exciting sailing. The foiling is sexy for TV, but it's not what the average sailor enjoys. This is, you're never going to see a foiling boat. I'm not going to say you're never going to see a foiling boat on a Wednesday night beer can race. You're going to see old CNCs out there. You're going to see J's are all over the place now. So it has taken a turn. It has become modernized, but I don't think you're going to see foiling boats in the Great Lakes in the near future.
We're talking about the opportunities and the world it's going to change. And I pulled two columns. I pulled some old stuff from my old columns from the old days when I was writing newspapers. And I found two columns from 87 and 88 in all the court cases that Dennis Conner was involved in. And I read through some of them, and I think if you literally change the dates from 1987 to 2025, it was a different set of circumstances, but it was the same venom. It was the same rich boys arguing over this, that, and the other thing. We thought Michael Fay was going to be this great guy because Conner was the villain. Come to find out that when they finally got down to nuts and bolts, that Michael Fay was just as much of a competitive jerk, so to speak, as the rest of the guys that were fighting for the America's Cup. So I say it's changing, and then I kind of wonder sometimes if maybe it's just rich boys and their toys.
Oh, it absolutely is. I always enjoy it when some people come and tell me about, we need to get back to the America's Cup the old way where it wasn't all about money. And I come to them, it's like, yeah, when Vanderbilt was racing against Bick, it wasn't about money then. I mean, those are the two richest people in the world. So
One of the places that I've always, as a coach, and one of the places that I've always tried to figure out to learn a little bit is at the junior sailing level. And for a short time ran our program at Crescent, but I'm working on being part of the U.S. Sailing's education committee for both coaches and instructors, where they've asked if I was interested in kind of helping out, and with no racing background, but being a longtime coach. And there's been a lot of discussion about how we do things. I mentioned earlier in the year about, for example, how we count kids. And so if you got one kid and you got you got 4 different 2-week sessions during the summer, some clubs will count them as 4, one club will count them as 1.
mm-hmm.
And if you've got 8 kids and you've got 8 sessions, you could look at 64 as far as a number. And I said, well, that's kind of an artificial number. There was some complaints that somebody had come back to us that we'd made the point. And then a couple people, Lexi Pine from U.S. Sailing made a point that if you really want to count the number of kids in your program, and I'm going to get to my point, but if there's 27 kids in the program, but they end up having 43 sessions, the reason they count them dual is not to try to cheat the numbers as much as it's to give them an understanding of how to staff that extra 27, 30, 35 classes. So it's just kind of a dual number. And at the end of the day, when the U.S. Sailing does their numbers, they have a hard number, and there's an argument at all levels as to whether or not the numbers are as represented as they are. My point is that we got to do a better job of listening to the process and knowing what we're trying to do so that we can do a better job. But I think it'll be interesting with somebody like me coming in, maybe being on a national level with helping out a little bit with just offering some opinions if I'm lucky enough that they invite me. It'll be interesting to work with a bunch of folks who are, very dedicated national level junior sailors. So we'll see if there's a voice on the outside that can make a difference.
Absolutely. John Pierce has been at U.S. Sailing running the junior sailing program. He's doing a fantastic job. He was a sailor. He has great passion for this. And the reality of it is, to maintain our sport, we have to bring up our junior sailing programs. So I'm very involved in the sailing programs through IOIA and ARE. And, I have a passion for the kids. Alec Chubalowski is out of Grosse Yacht Club, and he's the one who runs IOIA's, what we call Traveler Series, and the Bay Week. We had 96 kids at Bay Week this year. That's down. When I was counter in 2015, we had 147 kids at Bay Week, which was kind of being an average back in the teens and things. So we're down a little bit. People could say it's something about COVID. Yeah, a little bit about COVID because we didn't have the kids coming up through the opties. But these 96 kids, they're all pretty good. They're all pretty good sailors. The reality of it is that we at our yacht clubs have to put programs together. One of the things that I talk to people about when the kids come on Tuesday night, Thursday night, Wednesday, whenever it is that they're racing, they train, and sometimes we forget to let the kids go out and have fun on a boat. I mean, just let the kids go out and just sail the boat around, do whatever they want to, giggle, run around, splash each other, and things like that. You got to make the sport fun. But you and I have strived to create more sailors at the junior level, and I think that the laser Iokas are the Opties and the 420s. They're the proper boat to have us in our Great Lakes. U.S. Sailing is looking at getting something more exciting like VXs. So I'm not in favor for it. I'd rather see the the 420s out there.
The only editorial comment I'll make is I hope the DYRA group, which is where we're located, or at least where I'm located in terms of the process, I'd like to see them get out of the lake and get down to Lake Erie, get over to Lake Michigan and do a little bit better. Michael Kirkman's a perfect example. We've had a number of other young men, and the Curter brothers, both of them, have had this opportunity to go on to bigger and better. And to have that opportunity, I know we've talked to us about this before, but we started ski racing today, our first day of season. We're in the classroom and we're doing the rest of it, but I'll be on snow this weekend. And we have a chance to watch our local kids get out of the area to get to Vail and to get to some of the national and the junior national programs, some of the JO programs. And the only way you get better is to push yourself beyond the limits of what's in front of you. And hopefully there'll be one of those things. Couple of Go
I'll
ahead.
tell you what is when the junior sailors are sailing against their own fleet in their own area there, you can be a hotshot sailor, but as soon as you get into a little bit more of a regional type event, where Barb Seske's running the DRYA, she's been doing a great job for a long time. There's a lot of sailors up at DRYA, but I'd certainly like to see some of the kids from the DRYA get involved in the Chub. We have JOs this year. The Bay Week is a big regional sailing event. So we'd like to promote to get some of those kids out there. There's more opportunities than just in the area.
Just a couple side notes on some things. I was going to have some T-shirts made up with something related to the Chicago Yacht Club in Ohana, some kind of protest or some kind of satire. We probably decided to pass on that because we thought we probably pissed too many people off. So we passed on that one. It'll be interesting to see. Mr. Copart's got a brand new 70 Santa Cruz coming in for the Detroit Charter Company, which is something you'll be able to chart a charter for. I guess you can get up to 39 people on it. So that's a second boat. And there was a bunch of discussion online about where he's going to park it. It'll be parked downtown Detroit. So that'll be another boat of that series. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I think the 52 fleet will grow. There's some talk that there's going to be 2 or 3 more boats in that fleet. We did get a chance to talk to Martin Kennett, who's the gold medalist from Denmark, who's part of the Katana group. And I know he's talking about bringing in some more European guys and figuring out where that all fits. So that'll be kind of fun to watch. And we've been now kind of figuring out at the end of this season what's next, where we headed, and hopefully we'll have we've had lucky enough to have somebody like Wally Cross as a regular member of the show, as well as you. It's just been a really fun summer to get to meet all these people and to have these conversations. And did you have a high or low point this year?
I don't know. As you and I set up at the Mackinac, I was not on Fuzzy Logic for the Mackinac race because on Father's Day I had a stroke, and so I mean I was lucky. I got through it. It just didn't feel good, and so I didn't get to do a lot of sailing. Got to do most of my Wednesday night sailing. I think as a PRO. I got to run 10, 12, got a couple of national championships. Those are always fun to do. And kind of looking forward to a few national championships next year. Yeah. So did I have a high point? Yeah, it was the walking out of the hospital and Father's Day was one of my high points. But I have to say that when we talk about the TP52s, the Great Lake 52s, we're pretty lucky that in the Great Lakes that we have that quality of sailing. And it's pretty easy to go see. The sailors are very approachable. I mean, these, sometimes you have the East Coast and the West Coast, and they don't look at the Great Lakes to have top-notch sailors. But I'm telling you, we do. And it's fun to see those guys out there. What they, if you remember when they were in Holland for the last race, it came down to the very last race who was going to be a champion. So that was a great series.
It was, and the quality. I've said this a couple times. We've been on the boats. We've said that enough, but to watch them on the boat sail, you realize just how good those guys are, and it's a treat to be sort of up close and personal. My highlight for the year was sitting at the end of the dock at Makatawa and talking to Harry Melges IV, the grandson who's part of the American Magic fleet and was the skipper on the Junior America's Cup boat. And talking to us about the possibility that they were going to sell the company. Kate Muller, who's on the show before us here, and this is kind of a moving backwards, there's a new ownership of Melges, and we talked to her a couple of days ago, and she's married to a former World Cup champion and just a variety of, it's a very sailing family. She'd sailed at Marquette, Kate did, and Peter Terhune, who her husband has been a world-class level sailor. But talking to Harry and being able to know that we had that story and being able to bring that to you, that's going to be something that has been kind of fun. But while I'm sitting on the dock, my highlight of the summer was Terry Hutchinson walking by you have to remember, I'm a fanboy. I've covered other sports at the professional level, but I'm still a little bit of a fanboy at the age of 71 for sailing because these guys have done the rest of it. And I've always maintained since last summer that sometimes he's a cranky old man, and that's fine. But he walked by, knew my first name. Not that that's a huge deal, but was really absolutely convinced he wasn't going to talk to me. And I had a couple questions for him. That's why I was sitting waiting where I was waiting. And he stopped, and I asked my question. He didn't tell me exactly the truth. He told me the talking points. And I thought, well, that might be an answer to some question, but it's not the one I asked. And he just kind of stormed off. And it was, we've tried really hard on the show not to be, not to have gotcha questions, to be fair and be straight up with people. We bring I think we bring the celebrities, in this case, the highest level sailors, because they often have really good interviews. And these shows are longer than most, so you're not going to sit down to this, but the long form interview does make a difference. And we've had those interviews with some really cool people. But the idea that we're fair and trying to have some journalistic integrity, I think is the important part of why this thing's kind of grown. And we've had opportunity, and we'll see what happens in the off season. There's actually some offers on the table to go bigger, but then it's not just me and a camera. It's you and me, and once in a while, Wally and I to get together on a boat. And that's what this thing has been for 149 shows.
I think one of the exciting events for you this year is when Charlie Enright became CEO or president of U.S. Sailing. We've been kind of looking for maybe a little difference in U.S. Sailing. We're down to 30,000 members. I mean, that's not even a portion of the people who are out there sailing. So I mean, really excited about Charlie coming on board. He's been around the world. He's won championships. He's from Brown University. He's a really smart guy to figure out how to do this. And I think he's got proper passion for helping us out with sailing. And it can't hurt with Charlie being on board with.
Well, and then the other highlight story was that on Thursday night, before they announced that Charlie was going to be the new director on Monday, we had gone to Facebook to speculate because we'd finally kind of put it in a couple places that we knew that Charlie was going to be the guy. And we got another informational thing from Friday morning saying that when Charlie does the press conference on Monday, if we wouldn't say anything else until Monday, they would give us the first interview. And they inducted him into the job, replacing, oh my gosh, I forgot his name already. The old, I'll come back and I'll cut this. Anyway, I'll come back. So they ended up.
Jepson. His name is Jepson.
Huh?
Jepson.
No, not Jepson. Was the president. Oh my God, the guy that was the president of the Pistons. Oh my God, I can't think of his name. Doesn't matter. Let me come back to that. I'll cut this, so it's not a problem. Anyway, So anyway, we got a chance to not say anything more about the story, and they inducted him at noon, and I think at 1 o'clock or 1:30 he called us, and we had a chance to put the interview on that night. So I guess somewhere we've been fortunate enough to find some influence, or at least some contacts is probably the better word. And I'm really proud of that because I think we've kept our integrity. And I'm still the same schmo that I was when we started, with a 30 day at the end of South Dock at Crescent. And we've had some really good opportunities and really fun times with sort of expanding the knowledge base and more importantly the opportunity to really have conversations with some really great sailors. And
it's a good year. Good year. We went all the way from junior sailing up to the Great Lakes 52s. So we covered a lot of different programs in the Great Lakes.
Yeah. Well, that being the case, we're going to put this away until the end of March. Last year we came back in January, but we're doing a skiing show as we speak, Inside Great Lakes Skiing, which is going to be a sister process, and we're starting off that show with Sarah Schlepper, who is a 4-time American Olympic skier, who is now skiing for Mexico at the age of 46. And she's doing that because she married a Mexican national who's also a member of the Mexican national team. So it'll be interesting covering her, and we can have some fun with it and have some fun for next year. So we'll have that hopefully back healthy when we come back to March, and appreciate all of the folks, Wally and you and everybody that's been a part of the program. I just want to thank you for end of the 6th year. And that's a lot of shows. So that being the case, I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having us on. It's been a real pleasure.
Again, I want to get a chance to thank Cate and all the folks who've been on the show, and certainly our compatriot, Duane Burgoyne. He brings a different perspective. And I want to thank Wally Cross and all the other folks who've been a part of the show this year. Wally especially, because Wally's been, been very helpful. And there's not a more insightful racer, sailor, or professional in the sailing industry than Wally Cross, and we really appreciate all that he brings to the table. We hope you have a great winter. We look forward to a great spring. We'll see you at the end of March. We'll try to bring you the same kind of shows next year. We don't really know where we're going because we're not really sure how it's going to fit, but we'll figure that out, and have a great winter, and we'll see you next year.